Welcome to the closing plenary session of this event. My name is Vikas Raj. I am a founding team member of Impact. I've had the honor of serving on the board since its inception. And that means I've had the good fortune of attending every summit we have held since our first event in 2016 on the sidelines of the DNC in Philadelphia. And I can say, walking around the sessions today, reconnecting with old friends, meeting new ones, watching as the leaders of our community, leaders in the arts, as we see in politics, in policy development and community organizing, they presented, they debated, they questioned, and they guided us in learning from one another. And I can say we have come a very, very long way. Personally, it has been so inspiring to witness this community not only finding its voice, but declaring it to the world, live in the act. And as someone who has attended countless events and conferences, not always by my own volition, there is something uniquely comforting, at least to me, about being here. Most conferences I attend don't really look like this. And there's this kind of warmth and familiarity and a shared purpose and a shared set of experiences that is so fundamental to building this common voice. Our collective journey extends beyond politics. It is, as we were just talking about, it is a profound exploration of our identity in all of its shades. And critically, it is also an exploration of how that identity evolves alongside our fellow immigrant communities. How we can expand this zone of warmth that we feel, this zone of warmth and comfort, to other groups. So with that in mind, it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, someone who has thought a lot about these questions of identity and belonging for our community and other communities. My friend Nardeep Khurmi is an acclaimed writer, director, actor, hailing from the suburbs of Philadelphia, born in Switzerland. And Nardeep has received many accolades for his remarkable work in the world of cinema. But today he is here to discuss his latest film, Land of Gold. And this movie, which is now on HBO Max, or now on Max, delves into the Indian-American immigrant experience in all of its contradictions, but also highlights our strong allyship with the Mexican-American immigrant community. Nardeep not only wrote and directed and produced this film, he also stars in it, which I think is 4 Oscar nominations at the end of the year. I'm not in the Academy, technically, but at least 4. And I had the pleasure of watching Land of Gold over the weekend. It is terrific. It is really, really great. So without further ado, let us take a glimpse into this powerful film. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to present you with the trailer for Land of Gold.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Vikas, for that wonderful intro, and thank you to Impact, Sarah, your whole team. I'm honored to be here in front of all of you trailblazers, policymakers, and culture makers, all doing really amazing, powerful work. Now, Land of Gold, which you just saw the trailer for, is my first feature film. Thank you. Thank you. And as some of you may know or may not know, it is incredibly difficult to make a first feature, especially when you're coming from a BIPOC perspective. Now, we often have to bleed our traumas on screen in order to get the white majority to buy in and finance us and get the audiences interested. And then you have to ask yourself these questions as an artist. How do you use your privileged position to add something to the cultural conversation with that privilege? Now, I, for the longest time, thought about what is the South Asian narrative in the U.S. and how do I push that forward? I was born in Switzerland. I'm a British citizen as well as an American. And with the British narrative, the British Indian narrative, British South Asian narrative, I understand what that is. But with the South Asian American narrative, I've always found it a little bit elusive. Is it just our immigration story? Is it just us grappling with the cultural differences between us who were born as citizens versus our families who are not? You know, it has to be more than that, right? And we've been here for a minute. So Land of Gold was my first attempt at exploring what I think that narrative is. The narrative of allyship to communities within our South Asian community and beyond. Now, let me start from the beginning. Land of Gold, as you saw, is about a Punjabi American truck driver afraid about having his first child. And he takes this last long-haul drive cross-country and finds Elena, this 10-year-old Mexican-American undocumented young woman. And what began as a job to clear his head to figure out, can he be the father he wants to be, becomes a surrogate father-daughter story as they both try to redefine what family is to them. Now, the origins of this story began one random day while I was driving down a street in Los Angeles. I passed by a restaurant that specialized in Mexican Indian fusion food. Sounds delicious, right? But I was shocked. I was like, how could this exist? And who decided this was a good idea? Because, I mean, first off, it's a brilliant idea. Chilies, roti, tortillas, marinated meats, tomatoes, it all makes complete sense, right? But where did this original idea come from? So I started to do research. And as some of you may already know, the first South Asian migration wasn't in the 60s, as I also thought it was. It was actually in the late 1800s. And it was Punjabi farmers and loggers who came to the U.S. to farm and log. And as America is wont to do, cast an immigration ban called the Asian Exclusion Act. It was an extension of the Chinese Exclusion Act, which prevented and put a quota on the amount of Asians that could come to America and own land. So what happened to the Punjabis? They were stranded. But what they did was pretty remarkable. This was around the time that Mexican migration started happening, and the two communities started to form bonds. They started marrying, working together, created families. Their lifestyles meant something that were very similar, and they created this hybrid culture together, this really beautiful hybrid culture, and it made them have an opportunity to find their piece of the pie. I didn't know what could be more American than that. Around the time I was doing this research, we started being inundated in the news by reports of child separation at our borders. And I was heartbroken by this inhumane policy, one that politicized a humanitarian issue. But what was more shocking was that some of the conversations I was having with community members of ours, how unempathetic they were. Well, they need to wait in line. There's a right way to do this. We did it the right way. And I was just disheartened at my own immigrant community and how unempathetic they were to these immigrants, trying to make a better life for their families for the same reasons we came here. I wondered, had my community forgotten why they came to this country? Now, this siloing effect, it's not our problem idea. It's not something new. Today, we honor Bhagat Singh Thinn's landmark case. And it's interesting because I actually played Bhagat Singh Thind in a play. And I got to know him very intimately and the case very intimately. And I have a complicated view of him because though this was a landmark case that prevented us getting citizenship for a long time, he also threw the entire Asian community under the bus, using himself saying he was white to be able to get citizenship. And that's a complicated legacy that I think we need to acknowledge. And based off conversations I was having earlier, it was ringing true again. Our community has done so much in the last 100 years. We've quickly become the wealthiest immigrant class. We've earned powerful positions in leadership in tech, business, banking, politics, entertainment. And we didn't wait for our seat. We built the table. And it's beautiful to see that. But with that power and influence comes a big responsibility. We had Punjabi Mexicans. We had Bengali Harlem, the Loose Seller Act and the Voting Rights Act. We are in the U.S. and can call this place home on the backs of all the other communities who have fought for us and with us for our rights. The South Asian American identity is a story of being in community with others. We're not siloed. A word comes to mind when I think of this. It's a prefix, really. Interfaith, interracial, interlanguage, intercultural, intersectionality, even within our own South Asian community, right? There's a little decolonization of the mind that needs to happen here. The realization that there's no scarcity and there's so much out there if we're just willing to bandy together and fight for it. And when I reflect on my own life, I realize the majority of it is wrapped up in intersectionality, in school and work. Land of Gold was made in part by multiple types of South Asians. A cadre of communities came on board to tell the story of two hyphenate Americans, the Black community, Asian community, Latino community, even the Cherokee Nation. First Nations folks helped tell this story of hyphenate Americans, and it was one of the most beautiful places I could possibly be in community with all these folks helping tell this story. It made me realize we can celebrate our individuality while bringing up communities with us. Excuse me. Yeah. Now, we still have a lot of work to do within our community, between religions, different homelands, languages, hell, Bollywood or Tollywood, Amir Khan, Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan. Who is the better Khan? We don't know yet. So how does the next 100 years look for South Asian Americans in America? I think it lies in solidarity and community. With the Latino population, the Black population, East Asian communities, all communities. With the privileges we've earned, we have the access and the power to fundamentally change things for the better, to create the equitable and inclusive world we want. We can be that unifying force. We've certainly had the leg up and been assisted by other communities, and I think it's time we, as a larger group, begin making allyship and community our siren song. And while we continue to uplift ourselves, let's uplift those around us. Thank you so much. Thank you to Impact for having me, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Wow, look at this crowd. Hey, everybody, how we doing? Welcome Impact. It is so nice to see all of your smiling faces here. My name is Raghu Devaguptapu, and I'm one of the original board members of Impact. And in my day job, I'm the managing partner of Left Hook Communications. We're a full-service Democratic ad agency who works to elect Democrats up and down the ballot across the country. In doing so, we've been able to help elect a president, multiple U.S. senators, and dozens of members of Congress, including, and very proudly, Ami Bera and Raja Krishnamurthy from our own community. You know, I got to this town 20-some years ago after managing races across the country, and, you know, I used to, and when I first came to D.C., I was always the only brown person in the room, the first Asian to actually be a national political director of a party committee, where I ended up being 2 of the 4. And part of the reason why I was so excited to be on the ground floor helping start this organization, you know, back when I was the political director at the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, which was 20-some years ago, there were 4 Indian American electeds in public office at state legislatures nationally, you know. And that was only 20 years ago. And back then, when I would meet with candidates, I used to tell them that the best candidates were the ones who had posited local roots within their community, sort of engaged within that social fabric, and did the work within that community to serve well before they ran for public office, essentially becoming a son of the place that they're from. Which brings me to the honor of introducing our next speaker, the mayor of Cincinnati, Aftab Pureval, who not only is a son of our community, but is very clearly a son of Ohio. Here is a man who worked within the confines of his local community, held local elected office, and now as mayor, I believe as an Indian American elected, as the largest constituency in America as a mayor for somebody who's South Asian, is making transformative change in Ohio. So with that, Impact is thrilled to welcome Mayor Pureval to the stage.
Appreciate it. What's up, South Asians? How we doing? Long day? Yeah? Mixed results? Okay, come on. Let me hear a big shouts. Let's go. All right, we're almost done here. My name is Aftab Pureval, and I am the 70th mayor of the great city of Cincinnati, making me the first Indian American mayor, not just in Cincinnati's history, but also the first Indian American mayor of a major Midwestern city. Thank you so much for having me here today. And my position, my success has only been made possible because of Indian American impact. In fact, that's where I want to start, by thanking Impact. Thank you to Gautam, Neil, Deepak, and Raj. Back in 2015, when I was first running in my very first race, back when people in Ohio had no idea how to pronounce my name, Impact was one of the few national organizations who found me and took a risk on me by supporting me. Think about that. Impact invested in me, even though the AAPI population in Cincinnati and Ohio is quite small. Impact invested in me, even though the office I was running for, the Hamilton County Clerk of Courts, what the hell is the Hamilton County Clerk of Courts? I still have no idea. Impact didn't know, I barely know. They invested in me anyway. It was because of that investment at the local level, where most of the governing happens anyway, that I was able to have the resources necessary, not just to run and to win in that race, but then to go on to run for Congress and win as mayor of Cincinnati. But first, let me just briefly introduce myself. Let's start with my name. The correct way to pronounce my full name is Aftab Pureval. And my name, thank you, mouthful. My name reflects my multi-ethnic background. Aftab is my first name, and it's actually Persian, and it means sunshine. Now, keep in mind, I am not Persian. No one in my family is Persian. There's no Persian friends of mine. My family was really committed to my identity crisis. So my first of two middle names, Karma. Karma's my Tibetan name. My mom is from Tibet. She was forced to flee when the communists took over, so she grew up in India as a refugee. Karma means fate. Singh, S-I-N-G-H, is the name my Sikh father gave to me, and Pureval is a reference to the farming village where my grandparents grew up in Punjab, India. Aftab Karma Singh Pureval. Now, I know that's confusing. I'm half Punjabi, half Tibetan. I'm 6'3", born in Beaver Creek, Ohio, but I'm all Ohio, baby. In fact, for a lot of my life, I've gone by Aftab, because for as long as I can remember, I've been surrounded by white people. Midwestern Asians know what I'm talking about. Any Midwesterns in the room? There we go. All right. You are my people. We are not just normal South Asians. We are Midwestern South Asians. Midwestern South Asians are special. We have a shared experience. First of all of our parents are out of their minds. When immigrating, they could have gone anywhere. The sunny skies in Florida, the dense AAPI communities in New York or California, and they said, screw it. I'm going to Sheboygan, Wisconsin. The whole damn family is lactose intolerant, but let's go to the cheese capital of the world. That's badass, right? It doesn't get more punk rock than that. I mean, that's insane behavior. They were like, let's go somewhere where everyone's going to think we're Mexican. But don't look now. But Midwestern South Asians are growing in our numbers. Just look at Ranjiv Puri, my former intern at Ohio State. Don't tell Michigan constituents, kicking ass in the Michigan State House. Give him a round of applause. Or the new clerk of courts, my old seat, Pavan Parikh, who just got elected with a huge margin. Let's give him a round of applause. I saw him earlier. And just up the road, on the clerk thing, there's now a new generation of Cincinnatians who believe the Hamilton County Clerk of Courts has to be Indian. So I think we're doing well there. Just up the road in Akron, the birthplace of LeBron, Shamus Malik won his primary for mayor and is uncontested in the general, making him the second South Asian to serve as mayor of a major Midwestern city. And Midwesterners aren't alone. South Asians across the country have had to fight for our cultures to even exist. In fact, the whole history of South Asian Americans has been defined by activism. Just look at the activists and trailblazers who have been in this room. When they said South Asians can't serve in executive positions, Aruna Miller became the first woman of color and first South Asian American woman to serve as lieutenant governor in U.S. history.
You guys are tough Indian parents.
Lieutenant Governor and a polite applause? Are you kidding me? Let's hear it for Aruna. My God. Good Lord. In a time when young brown girls are told to sit down and shut up, Meena Harris, Congresswoman Jayapal, and Padma Lakshmi led a canvas that redefined organizing for a new generation and knocked over 3,000 doors in Philadelphia. Let's give it up for them. And when they said a brown woman would never be vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris fought back and proved them wrong. And in 2023 and 2024, we have another opportunity to grow our representation, to grow our voice about the policies and ideals and values that we all care about. Guys, we are not just an interest group of voters. We are the difference between winning and losing. We are the whole damn election. In these difficult times, I understand it can be easy to throw up your hands and say that I am powerless. There's nothing we can do. That's crap. Never forget our power. Just look at me, the son of a Tibetan refugee, a Punjabi immigrant, and in just one generation, my family went from being refugees to now the mayor of Cincinnati. Cincinnati, a place with just 2% AAPI population. My mom was basically born in a tent on the side of a mountain, and now I'm mayor. That story only happens right here in this country. My point is this. Never forget, we can do anything. I'm South Asian as fuck and proud of it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much to Mayor Pureval for his remarks and lifting the energy of the room. We appreciate it. For those that don't know me, my name is Tahir Hassan Ali. I'm the National Organizing Director with Impact. Thank you. We've heard a lot about representation at this summit. You've heard from amazing elected leaders like Mayor Pureval, some elected leaders in the breakouts, and many folks who have run for office. Representation is important because it gets us a seat at the table. But all of us know in this room that even though we're just starting to become part of the national conversation, it takes active effort and participation over the course of the entire year, 365 days a week, in order to create meaningful change. That's why I'm so honored to introduce our next keynote speaker, whose personal journey and family history speak fully to the theme of this summit and the impact she's had on creating a cultural shift to unite this country. She's a renowned civil rights leader, a lawyer, an award-winning filmmaker, an educator, an innovator, a best-selling author of the book See No Strange, and was recently recognized by the White House as one of 16 uniters nationwide working to bring their communities together across lines of racial, religious, political, and other differences to prevent acts of hate-fueled violence. Valarie Kaur was called to action when a family friend was murdered in a hate crime a few days following 9/11. He was a turbaned Sikh man killed by a man who called himself a patriot. Across the country, people of color were beaten, chased, shot, and stabbed in thousands of hate incidents that were barely reported in the media. Afterwards, Valarie took her camera and began a journey across America to tell her community story and fight for racial justice. Her journey has led to policy change on multiple fronts, including hate crimes, racial profiling, immigration reform, solitary confinement, internet freedom, and more. And now her journey has led her here to share her experiences with us. So please, everyone, join me in welcoming Valarie Kaur to the stage.
Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. The beloved community belongs to divine oneness, and so does all that it achieves. 110 years ago, my grandfather sailed by steamship across the Pacific Ocean to the shores of California. His name was Kehar Singh, and he was born in a small village called Chandama in Punjab. When he was 18 years old, his family sent him off to escape British India. He traveled by train to Calcutta, sailed to the Philippines, where he worked for 2 years as a night watchman and peddling cloth in order to raise enough money to board a Japanese steamship that would take him to San Francisco. When my grandfather saw the city on the horizon, his heart must have leapt in his chest. He must have gotten ready to disembark, but the ship made a turn and docked on a small island inside the San Francisco Bay instead. When he disembarked, the uniformed officials took one look at his turban and beard and threw him into barracks. This was Angel Island. Ellis Island on the East Coast was a beacon of hope for European immigrants. But Angel Island on the West Coast, built in the 1900s, was designed to incarcerate, interrogate, and deport as many Asian immigrants as possible. And South Asian immigrants were called, quote, the least desirable class. This was a time of white nationalist rage, where newspaper headlines warned of a tide of turbans and a Hindu invasion. My grandfather would have been deported. I would not be here before you today if it weren't for the intervention of a lawyer, Henry Marshall, who filed a writ of habeas corpus to help free my grandfather on Christmas Eve, 1913. Babaji made his way down California into the Central Valley, sleeping in barns at night, twisting his body in grape crates to keep himself safe from the snakes. He toiled for pennies an hour on the farmland during the day, dreaming of owning his own land. 10 years later, the Bhagat Singh Thind decision came down, making it impossible for my grandfather to own the land that he farmed, denying him the ability to become a citizen because he was not white, which was another way to say less than human. But my grandfather and all of those ancestors in that first generation, they kept laboring for a future they saw only in their dreams, and they kept laboring together. When my grandfather saw his Japanese American neighbors rounded up and taken to their own incarceration camps in the punishing deserts of the Midwest, he watered their fields. He tended their orchards. He made it possible for them to come home to a life. He went to visit them to tell them that they were not alone. I grew up on the land that my grandfather farmed, surrounded by orchards, riding on tractors, looking up at a night sky full of stars. I love to sit on Babaji's lap and feel his scratchy beard on my cheek. My grandfather was so proud to be an American, so proud when he finally won his citizenship that he never missed an election. Even when he was old and frail, in his 90s, my father would lift him up and carry him to the polls just so he could cast his vote. He was that proud. So you see, I grew up with a story of forward progress. Then I was a kid in college. And in the wake of the horror of September 11th, racial violence exploded on city streets across America, and Balbir uncle, Balbir Singh Sodhi, was the first person killed in that avalanche of hate. He was a Sikh American father wearing his turban and beard like my grandfather, planting flowers in front of his gas station when he was shot 4 times in the back by a man who called himself a patriot. I was going to be a professor. But Balbir uncle's murder turned me into an activist. I grabbed my camera, I hit the road, I went from home to home, from city to city, from Gurdwara to Gurdwara, sometimes when the blood was still fresh on the ground. And you know what we called it? We called it the backlash, for we had seen this violence before. Right? We saw it in the aftermath of the first Gulf War, in the aftermath of the Iran hostage crisis, in the aftermath of the Oklahoma City bombing. And so we thought this too, this violence, this backlash would end. But the backlash didn't end. Hate violence was followed by state violence, racial profiling, detention, deportation, surveillance, torture, all fueled by the forever wars abroad, so that it gave rise to a new white nationalist movement on this soil, so that today hate crimes are at an all-time high. All those years, with every film, with every lawsuit, with every campaign, I thought that we were making the nation safer for the next generation, like my grandfather did. And then I became a mother. And when I tie my son's long hair into a juda and send him off to school, I have to remember that he heard his first racial slur at 4. I was 6, he was 4. And we are reckoning with the fact that we are raising our children in a nation more dangerous for them than it was for us. What is progress? Some days are so deadly, I can taste the ash in my mouth. The future is dark. But I hold a question in my heart that I have come to ask all of you. What if? What if this is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if our America, the America our ancestors dreamt, is not dead, but a country still waiting to be born? What if the story of America is like one long labor, a series of expansions and contractions, so that every turn in the cycle feels like the turn before? The white nationalist rage that punished my grandfather feels like the rage that's raining down on us now. So what has changed? But you know what has changed? Look around this room. All of us, all of you. There are more of us now showing up to the labor than there have ever been before. Building organizations, making art and music, exercising our voice, running for Congress, running for the vice presidency, and winning. We are the ones who are forging new relationships of solidarity that have never been before. And each time we show up, we are making more and more space, getting closer and closer to the America that wants to be born. A series of expansions and contractions. I don't know how many more turns through the cycle it's going to take, but I do know that I want to show up to the labor when it's my turn. And that the only way we last in the labor is if we are laboring with love together. You see, this is what I've learned after 20 years of being in the trenches. The social, political, and economic crises of our time are fueled by a deeper spiritual crisis, a constriction of the human heart, the choice to stand for some of us instead of all of us. And so the only way we can build just institutions that last is through a shift in culture and consciousness, a way of being, a way of seeing that leaves no one outside our circle of care, a revolution of the heart, what I call revolutionary love. I believe that revolutionary love is the call of our times. Revolutionary love is the choice to enter into labor for others, for our opponents, and for ourselves. I've spent 20 years of my life organizing around hate. I will spend the rest of my life organizing around love. And I want to do it with all of you. So I want to put into your hands 3 practices that you can take with you. Are you ready? Number 1, see no stranger. Nako beri nahi begana. Nako beri nahi begana. I see no enemy. I see no stranger, said Guru Nanak. And all the sages, all those ancestors who knew the truth of our oneness, they asked us to expand the circle of who counts as one of us to include all of us. How? How do we do that? We must lead with our wonder. Imagine, you can look upon the face of anyone and say, sister, brother, sibling, beloved, you are a part of me I do not yet know. Say that with me. You are a part of me I do not yet know. When we lead with our wonder, we let in other people's stories, and those stories change us. You see, for most of my life as an activist, I only cared about our story, our struggle, our fights. But I had to keep listening, and the more I listened to the stories of Black people, I began to understand that anything our people have survived, they survived long before us. And anything that we have achieved has been because Black ancestors have fought for it before our ancestors got here. So we must center Black lives in all of our advocacy. Oh, but I had to keep listening. I had to keep listening, and I had to listen to the stories of Indigenous people. And that was very hard, because I began to reckon with the truth that we have participated in the colonizers' project, that there is blood in the farmland that I call my own. But we can tell a new story of America that begins with Indigenous wisdom and that holds up Indigenous memory as a true starting point for the history of the Americas. Imagine if we can center Black lives, lead with Indigenous wisdom, and forge new relationships of solidarity. Nardeep was just here on stage talking about this extraordinary story, Land of Gold, modeling, showing what that solidarity can look like, can feel like. That takes courage. Shallow solidarity is rooted in the logic of exchange. I show up for you, so you show up for me. But deep solidarity is rooted in the ethic of love. I show up for you because you are my sister. You are my brother. You are my family. Who stories have you not let in quite yet? What new relationships are you ready to forge? Who are you willing to fight for? Okay, this brings us to our second practice. Are you ready? The second practice, tend the wound. Because if we're fighting opponents. So how do we fight our opponents with the ethic of love? Nako beri nahi begana, I see no enemy. There are no such thing as monsters in this world. Only human beings who are wounded, who act out of their insecurity or greed or fear or rage. That does not make them any less dangerous, but when we choose to see their wound, when we choose to listen to even their stories, they lose their power over us. Now, this is not all of our work, right? If you have a knee on your neck right now, your revolutionary act is to take the next breath. We need you to stay alive. That is your role. But if you are someone who is safe enough to listen to those stories, we need you now in the labor. 15 years after Bobir uncle was killed, his younger brother Ranaji and I looked at each other and said, who have we not yet tried to love? We reached out to Frank Roque, his killer in prison, and at first I thought it was a terrible mistake. He said, well, I'm sorry for what happened to your uncle, but I'm also sorry for everyone killed on 9/11. He was refusing to take responsibility. I could feel fire rise in me, rage inside my rib cage. But Rana continued to listen to Frank, to wonder about him, and he could hear what I could not hear. He said, Frank, this is the first time I've heard you say you were sorry. And Frank said, yes, I am sorry for what I did to your brother. And when I go to heaven to be judged by God, I will ask to see your brother, and I will hug him, and I will ask for his forgiveness. And Rana said, we've already forgiven you. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is freedom from hate. Sometimes forgiveness comes at the very end of a healing journey. Sometimes the very beginning. Sometimes the messy middle. Sometimes the survivor withholds forgiveness because it's the only thing she has, and that's okay. It's up to her to decide, but this is what I wish to tell you. If you forgive, you free yourself. Forgiveness is for you, not for them. Forgiveness is for you, and once I could forgive, once I could draw to that story, I could see Frank Roque's wound, and I began to understand that so much of white nationalist rage in this country is a symptom of unresolved grief. They are grieving the illusion that this nation ever belonged only to them in the first place. Seeing that wound preserves their humanity, and it preserves our own, so we don't become what we are fighting against, so that we can hold up a vision of an America that leaves no one behind. This is long labor. This is courageous labor. And so that brings me to the third practice. How do we love ourselves in the labor? I call this practice breathe and push. This, you can tell I'm a mama, this is the wisdom of the midwife. She doesn't say, okay, my love, are you ready? Push all the way. No, she says, breathe. Okay, now push. Now breathe again. There's a kind of cadence, a kind of rhythm to sustain our stamina through any long labor. The labor of raising a family, the labor of building a movement, the labor of birthing a nation. We need to be breathing enough before we make our push. And I have to tell you, as an activist, this was the last thing I learned. I thought I had to just push and push and push and push and all the way. I ground my bones into the earth. I thought I had to make myself suffer in order to serve. I was always comparing my pain to the pain of the people I was serving. And so I was never worthy enough until I had a breakdown and I had to confront the origin of all that pushing without breathing. And I understood that there was this little critic in my mind, the little critic who says, oh, you are not good enough. You are not smart enough. You are not pretty enough. You're not strong enough to live in this world. And I had to wonder about this part of myself. Right? You are a part of me. I do not yet know. And once I did, I realized that this little critic is born of internalized oppression. That this little critic was so afraid that the world would eat alive a brown woman who stood for love and justice. And you know what? The little critic is right. He's just wrong about the solution. The solution is not silence. It's more solidarity. And so now I'm teaching myself how to breathe. I'm teaching myself how to love myself for the first time in my life. This morning I went for a walk. I was breathing. Before I came on stage, how are you breathing every day? I had to remember to breathe like I did when I was a child. Are you breathing with the stars and the sea, with the earth and the trees? How are you breathing? How are you breathing every day? Who helps you breathe? Who do you help breathe? And are you breathing with your ancestors? Are you breathing with your ancestors? My family and I, we made a trip to Angel Island, a pilgrimage. We had never set foot there before. Do you know you can just buy a ferry ticket and you can go there? But you see, my grandfather never talked about Angel Island. We didn't even know he was there until we discovered the records after he had died. So it was a big deal. I brought my children, my parents, and we went along the ferry, and the sea mist in our face, and The moment that we stepped down on that soil, my father's eyes just welled with tears. This was the first steps my Babaji took, was on this soil. And oh, here is the place where he was interrogated for all those hours. And here are the barracks where they were crammed in like sardines, night after night, day after day. And as I was beginning to feel like, my father's breaking down, I'm feeling like the despair in my heart, imagining all of that pain and loneliness. And suddenly I hear, Mommy, look. And I run over, what, Gavi, what? Mommy, look. And there is Punjabi scratched on the walls of Angel Island. Tara Singh, Nomine, the names and dates of our ancestors who were incarcerated and how long they spent in the barracks. And I was going to turn to comfort my son. I'm like, but he had a look of absolute joy on his face. He was so excited that he could read it. His ancestors were speaking to him. Even within these walls that tried to silence our ancestors, 110 years later, my son could hear their song. And in that moment, a portal opened up. And I could see my grandfather. And I wondered if he could see me. And if he could hear my son's laughter. I invite each of you to think of an ancestor who makes you brave. Imagine them standing behind you. Notice what that courage feels like in your body. Okay, now think of a child in your life who brings you joy. Imagine them standing in front of you. Notice what that joy feels like in your body. Put your hand on your heart with me for a moment. We are the bridge between ancestors and descendants, between the past and the future. And that means that we can be brave with our life and send love in both directions. Let it go. Are you ready? Say it with me. We're ready. Are you ready? Are you ready? We are the ones who are ready. We are the ones who, out of the ashes of Angel Island and Bellingham, Oak Creek and Indianapolis, we are the ones who can birth a new America where we see no stranger, where we tend the wound, where we breathe and push for the world that we dream. We are the ones. We are ready with our ancestors at our backs and our children in the future. We are ready to harness the wisdom of the last 100 years to shape the next 100 years. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Yes, we are. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh. Thank you. Thank you, Indian American Impact. Thank you, thank you. This is the beginning. No, let's just go on.
Wow. Can you hear me? Wow. Incredible. I feel so inspired. It's just, I'm still shaking. My name is Vinay Thomalapalli. I'm one of the board members of Impact. I've been on board from its inception. Prior to that, I was US Ambassador to Belize and followed on with that with starting a program in the Department of Commerce called Select USA. And then most recently, I served in the administration up until 3 months ago as the Acting Director for Trade and Development Agency. All the 3 positions in government, I was the first Indian American in those positions. In US history, looking around, just the number of people I met today and in the past at the summits, Impact Summits, I've met so many of you, and I continue to meet people in the future who will be the first ones breaking that glass ceiling. So I'm so proud to be among you. So thank you
for coming this year. Thank you for participating and making this summit such a success. Just a few thank you notes. On behalf of Impact's board, I'd like to request the board members to just stand up for a few seconds, just so we can give you an applause. I also sincerely want to thank Impact staff. Specifically, I want to name Neil, Sarah Shaw, Sarah Lynn, Tahir, Rish, Liz, Priyarna, Aishika, Pooja, and Becca. Thank you, please. Thank you. Stand up. Please stand up. I want to give you a round of applause. Do not want to forget Marriott staff. So many folks have made this to be as good as it turned out to be. Also want to thank the project coordinator, Ron Amber. So thank you so much. Without further ado, I'd like to, such a pleasure to introduce some real talent, Desi talent. Ari Afsar and Nikhil Saboo are going to grace us with their music, which was inspired by none other than our executive director, Neil Makija. Thank you, Neil.
So about 3 weeks ago, hi, I'm Ari, and this is Nikhil. And about 3 weeks ago on Instagram Live, I interviewed Neil, and we had a very beautiful, I would say vulnerable. Would you say it's vulnerable conversation that we had?
Wonderful.
And from that conversation, I was inspired to write this song that I am going to invite some incredible folks onto the stage. Can we give it up for amazing community members?
Come on up.
Woo! So we had a breakout, our third breakout, and we talked about art and culture, and then we learned this song. And I think y'all are going to be able to sing along with it. Valarie might have mentioned a little bit about it today, too. We're also still a little shaking from that as I'm sobbing trying to sing this happy song right now. And I am honored to be able to share the stage with you and all of you.
Truly.
Are y'all ready? You ready, Neil? Is everybody ready? This is me doing filler.
Is the track ready?
Is the track ready? All the things that I was never told, all the lies that I was sold, make my pride go up in smoke. Keep my head down and I'll be just fine. Make me feel like I'm a part, but you'll never be in charge. Now I'm treading through the water when there's only one. How can we be seen? And I know just as a daughter, well, I gotta do better than their dreams. You ready? I'm ready. Oh, not staying the hell away. Not staying the hell away. Ready? We're ready. Oh, 'cause there's always been a place.
Come on, give it up for this.
Give it up for this choir. All right, the lyrics are here. I think you're going to be able to catch on. This next chorus, I think y'all can join. You ready?
Let's do it. You ready? In the moment we changed everything. Finally see me on the screen, and my elders can't believe the generation that is breaking things, 'cause the moments need to last from 100 years just in the past. And my work is never done. When there's only one, how can we be seen? And I know just as a son, well, I gotta do better than their dreams. You ready? I'm ready. No, not staying the hell away.
Not staying the hell away.
You ready?
We're ready.
Oh, 'cause there's always been a place.
There's always been a place. If I work a little harder, maybe I'll find something that I've not understood.
'Cause you know, with children getting smarter, we can't repeat 'cause we think we should. Ready? I'm ready. Oh, not staying the hell away. Ready? Ready? Oh, 'cause there's always been a place. Hey, I'm ready. Oh, not staying the hell away. You ready? We're ready. Oh, 'cause there's always been a place.
Let's give it up one more time for Ari, Nikhil, and our amazing backup. All right, y'all, with that, we are ready to end Summit. Thank you for a wonderful day. Safe travels back home. We'll see many of you tonight. Thank you so much.